while the news is the Netherlands being inhumane. 30% of those who, sorry, 30 out of 45 people, I guess, is the way that the article explains it. There's 3 different articles that I read, and none of them have the same information. But basically, the gist from all 3 of them is that the Netherlands is trying to give autistic people what we are asking for. It's what we are asking for. How many years have you heard me speaking about a booth? When everyone's go-to is to blame one of us because we're easy to do that to. And you want to say that we are the problem. We're always the problem. It's not your miseducation, your assumptions, your bias. No, it's our fault that you harm us for being different. Not for being wrong, not for being evil, not for being heartless. All these things that you assign to us, they're not us. These factors that the Netherlands are associating, it's how their society, same as ours here in America, how we treat the autistic community. We downplay everything that an autistic person is going through. The problem is that downplaying it is a horrible thing. This is how we found out that boys are autistic often before we find out the girls are autistic. Boys are treated differently, and we are taught differently from birth. That's right. Now let's talk about James. Who is James? I probably got the name wrong. So this guy takes out his garbage. He's in Washington State, just across the border from here. This happened last year. So this guy, he's a police officer, takes out his garbage. Well, he sees a hobo. Now, this is not the official story that they told the first time, but it's pretty close. There's just one minor detail. This officer was apparently taking out his garbage when he saw a homeless person. Well, here's the thing, is that he was an off-duty police officer. He went inside. There was a man who was running through who had a gun. This officer went inside to make sure that he was armed. They made sure that they called 911. They left the homeless guy out of the scenario. Because, see, here's the thing, is that when he first went to the house, there was a homeless person that he was afraid of. Not the same guy who had the gun. Not the same guy that the police were pursuing in another call. This is the official story that they wanted to tell. And most of it's true, from what I could gather. That doesn't mean it's not all BS, because I don't have access to every little thing. As the news reported it, however, this officer, James, he was with his wife, and there was a phone call that had happened about somebody who was armed. And this person who came through who was armed happened to get into a scuffle with this guy at the garbage can. His wife, or he or his wife, I can't remember which one it was, ended up calling 911 and saying, hey, there's a man out here with a weapon, and, here's what's going on. The off-duty police officer ended up getting injured in the scuffle. Now, he probably would have needed stitches or something like that. But here's the thing, is that the officers who showed up shot this off-duty officer to death. Shot him to death. Even if you're a police officer and you know that your fellow officers are willing to commit felonies so that you don't get in trouble when you accidentally shoot somebody, it's not accidentally. They shot him on purpose. They just shot the wrong man. They'd already decided, oh yeah, this is one of those once in a lifetime opportunities where you get to shoot somebody and be the good guy, and you're going to take it. And you get there and you take your shot, you take your opportunity, and oh shit, that's the homeowner. Well, it's an easy enough thing to cover up. It was an accident. You didn't mean to shoot the wrong guy. How are you to know that it was the homeowner? You didn't show up there. You didn't show up there prepared for the situation. You showed up there with intent to kill as an officer. This is what happened to James. He got shot to death by other officers. He wasn't in uniform, and he wasn't one of their officers. They didn't know he was an officer. They killed him. At his own house in front of his wife. Because they thought that the cops would do some good. An off-duty police officer has to be afraid of calling the police. Unless they're actually the police that he works with. Jared Hahn, if he has to call the police, he's going to use the fact that he used to be an officer when he explains it. I used to be an officer, or I used to be a deputy here in Dual County, if they're not already aware. It'll get pushed through real quick for him. But if he tries to do that elsewhere, like Danny Weezer, a former Dual County deputy, he may lose his job. That officer in Washington State who got shot last year, shot to death by other police officers. It's the shoot first, ask questions later policy. That's the problem with living by mottos like, kill them all, let God sort them out. And then we have people that want to pretend that quoting from the Bible and explaining what it means, the way that it's actually written, the way that it's actually worded, to people who want to throw the Bible in my face. Or people want to throw the law in my face. Like, yeah, well, here's the thing, is that you keep saying you're not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. The problem is that you're an actual witness. You're a witness to the fact that the police officers lied. You're a witness to the fact that the Bollingers lied. You're a witness to those facts in some capacity or another. If Jared Hahn moves to Scotts Bluff, where nobody knows him, and he's in just his everyday clothes, and it's 10:30 at night, and there's an armed suspect running through the neighborhood. If he goes outside to subdue the man, he's not going to be able to run someone down. He's too large. But because he is outside of his domicile, likely armed, when the police show up, they're already pumping. They already have a lot of adrenaline going through them. They're already there. When you make the 911 call and they've been chasing the suspect through Scotts Bluff, reason I'm making it Scotts Bluff instead of where it actually happened in Spokane, and using officers in Nebraska is an explanation using actual human beings. For those of you in Chapel who know Jared Hahn and know Scott DaCosta, those officers in Scotts Bluff, other than the ones at the jail, are not going to recognize Jared Hahn's face. They also might not recognize him out of uniform when they have tunnel vision. They've been involved in a pursuit. Dispatch gets a hold of him and tells him, hey, the armed suspect that you're looking for is someone just called it in 2 blocks up. They run up 2 blocks up and they see a man who's armed there. They're going to kill him. That's literally what they're going to do. One officer in Scotts Bluff, the reason that I bring up Scotts Bluff is because there was an officer in Scotts Bluff, and although witnesses heard this officer say that, what was it they were claiming he said? And he probably did say this. But he was telling the guy to stop as he pulled the trigger. Like they heard him start to say something. They heard the beginning of the word, the trigger, or the gun going off, and then the end of the word. So they knew what word it was that he had said. Basically, it was something like stop or halt or, it was something short. But the thing is that they were able to infer what the man was saying based on hearing the beginning and the end of it. But the fact that the gun went off in the middle of him saying it shows that he wasn't going to take the time for a response. I don't remember if that was the guy who was armed with a knife who was deaf, or if that was the other guy who was not armed, but that situation happened in Scotts Bluff. The situation with that officer, James or whatever, I believe that was in Spokane that it happened. But it's difficult for us out here, especially autistic people who are your go-to for easy to blame, especially for intelligent, because then we get the assumptions, the things that you expect from an intelligent person. Even an intelligent person who is disabled, especially if you can't see their disabilities. The questions that you ask are based on your experiences, not ours. That's why when the victim is trying to tell you what's going on, it is important to listen to them, not speak over them or tell them what to do, what to think, what to feel. Tell them where to spend the resources that they don't have. I just paid over $100 to try to get help that ended up being a complete and total waste of that $100. I only get $800 a month to live on. I don't have the money to keep on moving and pay for a bunch of stuff to move elsewhere and then to move somewhere else after that. Always trying to hunt for an address. How am I supposed to get an address? All of my back money for my disability, what did it end up going to? Why is it that I never had the money to get a place of my own? It's because of systemic abuse. When I tried to turn in my predators, I was blown off. And then these people didn't want to admit that they screwed up, just like those officers who literally murdered a fellow officer in cold blood because they were in a state of rage. A state of tunnel vision. They're taught to shoot first, ask questions later. It's horrible. When it comes to autistic people, you know, their grilling and the good cop, bad cop thing, that doesn't work on hardened criminals. It works on people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. People who very specifically are having stress-induced reactions, trauma-induced reactions to long-term abuse. People who've been in situations and scenarios long-term where they haven't been allowed to have a voice, where anybody could do anything that they wanted to these people, and they had no way to defend themselves against it. Now we have modern technology. No matter how much I video these situations, I'm still not someone who's cared about, unless it's to paint me as a monster. Well, I can say those monstrous things. It's just as easy for me as it is for everyone else, isn't it? No, it's not. I think it's horrible. But I gotta ask you a question. How many times are you gonna let someone threaten to kill you and your friends and family before you threaten them back? Hey man, if you don't stop threatening to kill my friends and family, I will, and then proceeded by whatever your threat happens to be. What did I threaten? I threatened with lawyers. I threatened to take them to court. And they all knew that I didn't have any chance whatsoever. I'm broke. Who are police primary victims? Broke people. Who's most likely to win in court? The people who have the most money. Who's most likely to win an election? The ones who spend the most money. The Netherlands, here's the thing that y'all need to pay attention to. They're not being treated much better there. Euthanization is legal there. We can't stop how you treat us for having post-traumatic stress disorder. We cannot stop your assumptions, especially those of us who are male. Although, as always, they wanted to highlight females who are autistic. That's who the articles care about, because that's who people care about, specifically the females. A lot of the autism sites have to make specific stuff just for females, because that's the part that are going to be advertised as victims. The female autistic people are our victims, and then the male autistic people are obviously violent monsters that must be dealt with according to what? I mean, the ideas that you come up with are literally the same ideas as the final solution. How many Americans have spouted exactly what Americans did to the Japanese in internment camps? What the Germans did at forced labor camps? What Americans did at chain gangs? What the Nazis did at Auschwitz and Bergkristall, Gusen 2. What Americans did at Bremerton and Sydney. A lot of other locations, actually. We shipped German prisoners over here to the United States and set up tennis courts for them to play in, while Japanese were in internment camps all over the United States. We want to say do better. What does do better mean? Does it mean ignore autistic people? Does it mean to make laws that are supposed to protect us, but in reality, they leave us vulnerable? Vulnerable to systemic abuse? Vulnerable to financial abuse? Vulnerable to physical attack, sexual attack? In many cases, not vulnerable due to being stupid or ignorant, but vulnerable due to your assumptions and your actions and your selfishness, your cruelty. It doesn't matter how good of people we choose to be. There's always someone more important than us, and we gotta go to the back of the bus. Sean Schwartz, you're a male, you need to go to the back of the line. Most people hate you because you're a male. That's why the police, 96% of the people that they kill are men. Okay, there's more people in line. Sean Schwartz, you're homeless. People don't care about you. You need to go to the back of the line. We're all more important than you because they're more important than you because they're people who made bad decisions and now have children. They're more important than you because they have different genitalia than you. They're more important than you because they have more money than you. They're more important because they're better looking than you. They're more important because they are able to work. And these people keep saying, hey, you know what? I deserve to be in front of you in line. Hey, I work for a living. I work for a living. I have children. I have children. I'm responsible. I'm a responsible parent. You're an alcoholic who ended up a parent because you didn't think while you were drunk and horny to use a condom. Most people in the United States do not become parents because they're trying to become parents. Most of the guys I know didn't have a child by choice. Many of the women I know, it depends on when you ask them and who you ask them in front of. I know a lot of guys who are with women that they can't stand. She man-trapped them with a baby. I'm autistic, so I'm supposed to be too stupid to understand what that is. I'm supposed to be too stupid. I'm supposed to not have that social understanding. No, I just don't get embarrassed. I don't mind saying it how it is. You guys think that my panic attacks are scary? You think that me showing an example of what I go through is scary? I got people who do that to me in real life to my face, bud. I'm pretty nice about it. When we speak about these things in the newspapers, the things that I tell you are true, that you treat me like I'm a delusional liar for saying. Meanwhile, demographics nationwide are showing I'm telling the truth and have been all along. Meanwhile, I got to go to the back of the line, right? I got to go to the back of the line once because I'm a man. I got to go to the back of the line again because I'm disabled. I got to go to the back of the line again because I'm homeless. And then I have to go to the back of the line again because I'm intelligent. I'm intelligent. My disabilities can magically disappear because you think I'm Professor Xavier. Like I can magically, if I use the power of my mind enough, I can levitate my body through the air and magically, this is what you're expecting from me, okay? You're expecting me to be able to do things that I am literally incapable of doing. Physically incapable of doing. I understand I am not in a wheelchair. The problem here is that you don't acknowledge my disabilities, physical or otherwise. You pretend that I have the same opportunities as everyone else. No, I do not. To assume that and then project it upon me as if it is the absolute truth shows your ignorance of the situation and us as human beings. You don't understand our differences or try to understand our differences. You are all taught that we're dumb and that you have to walk us through how normal people think. No, you don't have to walk us through it. It's flawed. It is flawed. You say one thing and do another. You say philosophy, you act like animal. When you act like animal and talk philosophy, what am I to garner from that information? Now, if I do all the things that I'm supposed to do, the right way, the proper way, legally, it still doesn't matter because your bias and your assumptions are still there. You show your lack of respect for autistic people by talking over us. You pretend that because you had an argument with someone who is autistic in third grade, that all autistic people are idiots. Chances are pretty good you were wrong in the conversation or the argument that you had with that person. And chances are pretty good that you just assume that you won because they couldn't possibly be the winner because they're autistic. They couldn't possibly be more right than you because they're disabled. And this assumption that disabled people are stupid is a double-edged sword, isn't it? We're too stupid to know if somebody's hurting us. But we're smart enough to know that if we protect ourselves and hurt them back, that it hurts them. So therefore, we do know right from wrong, and we should be prosecuted. But the people who harmed us shouldn't be prosecuted because we're too dumb to know right from wrong. If it's wrong for me to do it back, it's wrong for them to do it to begin with. If it is wrong for an autistic person who cannot speak, who is moving their hands like this, if it's wrong for their mother to squeeze their hands and push them down into their lap and scream in their face, if that is wrong, then it is not wrong for that child to lift up their hands. When I saw that in the Autism Speaks video, that disgusted me. An autistic child being treated in a way that none of you would want to be treated. One of the classic things that they like to put in movies for cheerleaders is the going like this. That's an autistic trait, just so you know. And I've been made fun of nearly my entire life for doing that. I try not to now. Sometimes people pretend like you want to punch them. There's also defensive posture. closed fist by your side, screaming because the phone won't work to call 911 at a facility that's breaking the law. By the way, the things that I was trying to call 911 over, Clearview was closed down for. Except that the police in Johnstown never came to speak to me. Instead, what happened? I tried to call 911 to turn in Clearview, and to try again to turn in Officer Waylon Lolatai. Instead, I was assaulted, abused, injected with drugs, and assaulted some more, as well as being made fun of at Clearview Behavioral Health. Because when you try to tell on an officer, they send you out of jurisdiction, same as Sheriff Scott DaCosta did in Dual County. The same as Officer Schneider and his department did in Tacoma, Washington, sending me to Lakewood. Same as those Lakewood officers did, shipping me out of state. Oh, you can't turn it in here. You're in the wrong jurisdiction. Well, why did this police officer take me to the wrong jurisdiction? Why is it those officers have fought so adamantly to pressure me and bully me into leaving? Why is it that they would want to have me sent to some place out of jurisdiction? A place where I can't call 911 from that facility. And then when you find out that facility was closed down, not only for doing all of the things that I told you they were doing, including committing Medicare and Medicaid fraud, keeping people longer than they should have, putting drugs into people that are illegal, but then they made them legal, didn't they? Now drugs like ketamine and, of course, Haldol with Ativan can make you, I'm not sure if you knew this, can make you schizophrenic, can make you suicidal, can make you act on suicidal thoughts. Haldol, especially with Ativan, is one of the worst things that you can give to someone. You know what a B-52 is? It's, what's the proper measurement? Like 5 cc's of Haldol and 2 cc's of Ativan with a Benadryl kicker. B for Benadryl, 52 is for the 5 milligrams of Haldol and the 2 milligrams of Ativan. They also have one that's called a 10 and 2. This is the same thing as a B-52, but it's got twice the amount of Haldol. That's what they did to me. This is what happens when you try to turn in officers as a disabled homeless person, especially if you're a male. When you try to turn them in, they try to discredit you. They send you to their friends. Literally, they send you to their friends, to their coworkers, people who are mandated reporters. But what that does is it passes the buck and makes it some other mandated reporter's job. Because you don't want to do it, you pass it on to someone else. That's what the term mentally ill does. It puts you in a perpetual circle where nobody ever helps you. Nobody ever does anything about you being hurt. When you don't have friends or family who try to understand. When all they knew about you is how smart you are, and that's what they focused on, how smart you are. But then, when they found out that you were autistic, and that you have communication problems and people talk over you, they talk over you, and they play like everything is magically your fault now because you're autistic, because you're male, because you chose to be homeless. I've verified, greatly so, the difference between myself walking down the street with a backpack that will get me targeted and shot by the police, and a black man walking down the street who is likely to get shot by the police more so than a white person in his same position. The difference is a black man can't just take off his skin and put it in the trunk of his car. But I had a trunk of a car to put it in when I said that. Same as here. I can walk without having to carry my burden. The things that keep me alive at night. The things that keep me, in some cases, safe from predators. Believe me, I have something that I can grab no matter where I'm at. There is always something that I can grab if I need to defend myself with something. And by something, I mean literally anything in my environment that is not fucking bolted down. If I have to defend my life, there is a possibility that my natural reaction is to take that object, and obviously, that's something that I am against. When you back somebody into a corner and poke them with a stick until they scream for help, or yell at you to stop, when they tell you, hey, you need to ask this person if I actually did those things instead of just blaming me because somebody else you know said that. That's not how it is for a man, though. Every woman in America is taught that if she didn't get what she wanted right when she wanted it, to blame the man, people will believe her. Meanwhile, we gotta rely on people like James getting shot by his own peoples, while they would have protected James while he was in uniform, in his own jurisdiction, with his own department. The fact is, he lived somewhere different. That's one of the other ways that many officers get away with these purges and legal activity, by living in a different jurisdiction than the one you were committing a crime in. Then they have to get special permission from a judge to contact across jurisdictional lines, and a bunch of other stuff like that that gets real complicated. But is it that way the other way around? How easy is it for an officer to lie to a judge and get what he wants? Or to lie to his friend who is a county prosecutor? Or his friend and former coworker who is a city council member? That's right. Well, Scott DaCosta, when I repeatedly tried to turn in Jared Hahn for the crimes committed by Deputy Jared Hahn, Scott DaCosta blew me off every single time. And then the last time that he blew me off, he tried to insinuate that Jared Hahn had moved to elsewhere, wasn't in the jurisdiction anymore, could not be pursued, because he took a game and parks job elsewhere. No, he took the game and parks job in Chapel, Nebraska. That's where he still lives. That's where he's a city council member. That's where he got to abuse his power along with Polly Olson, the county treasurer, her daughter, as well, the city treasurer. The Chapel city treasurer is Ashley Bauer. She used to be Ashley Jefferson. Before that, it was Ashley Olson, Polly Olson's daughter. So the mother who went to jail for spending funds improperly was part of a group of people that I needed to turn in. The professionals that I had gone to and their reasons for not coming forward. And one of the things that it talks about in their mandated reporter training is that many people don't turn it in because it's their coworker, and that's why they are mandated reporters. They have to take the report and turn it in. even if it's their coworker, they have to turn in. If someone is harmed around them while they're off duty, or tells them about harm committed against them, even while they're off duty, they still have to turn it in. But it takes hours to do that, and they don't want to do it. Instead, setting me up for therapy 30 days away, then they get to go, oh, well, we didn't know. Or he's mentally ill, he doesn't know any better. When they charge me with crimes, yes, I magically know better then, don't I? And I've known so many people out on the streets who got a 10 and 2 or a B-52 and never came back from it. And then there's the injecting ketamine into people who are going through that. Saying, oh, well, you're here by your choice. Nobody's keeping you here against your will. You can leave anytime you want. You say, well, then I'm leaving. And then you get tackled to the floor and injected with drugs and told, well, the doctor ordered it. Really? Where's the doctor to order it? You literally just told me that I was here of my own volition and I could leave whenever I wanted. But now that I'm wanting to leave, you're wanting to change your mind and tackle me to the floor and inject me with drugs. This is not okay. When I was in the hospital in Lafayette, the Louisville hospital, I was taken there for attempting to end my own life. In the Netherlands, they would have allowed that. But I don't live there. I'm not lucky enough to live there. I'm unlucky enough to live in a country where we're treated worse than black people. We're treated worse than women. We're treated worse than native peoples. There's no reservation for us. No land at all to do anything with. No matter what, we're told we're not contributing enough. Meanwhile, no matter how hard we work, everything that we contribute, and our sweat and our blood, and the wear and tear on our bodies, you ignore all of that and you look the other way. The things that I said that you wanted to call delusional and crazy and claim that they were fears that nobody in their right mind would have because these people are supposed to do the right thing. Look how many people are on the news in these professional capacities. Nurses murdering people. Police officers murdering people. Female teachers getting pregnant by underage students. So far this year, there were 13 female educators. 13 of them who committed sexual assault against minors, their own students. 13 of them already this year that were female. Many of them pregnant. That's how they got busted. There's only been one male teacher or educator, because this also includes superintendents and people like that. There's only been one who has been convicted of having intercourse with one of his students. But there's also a lot of men who went to prison this year. I've been following the headlines. And last year, a lot of men who went to prison for things that are obviously defensive actions because they were being physically assaulted and or harmed. The police nationwide can take you to a hospital. When you try to turn them in, they take you to a hospital. They tell the hospital that you're schizophrenic, delusional, and homeless. The hospital injects you with drugs, puts a stamp on your paperwork. It's called rubber stamping. It's just assumed that a police officer's word of mouth is worth more than yours. Now you get to see how many of these officers and public officials, these rubber stamps that I've tried to turn in, who are now in prison for doing the things that I said they did. Shameful. How likely is it that the police are going to shoot me this year? I have about a 1 in 960 chance of being shot by a police officer just because I'm homeless. Because out of all of the people that the police shot last year, 61% of them were homeless, out of a population size of less than 600,000. Meanwhile, 81% of 7 million incarcerated peoples, 11 million depending on what you consider incarcerated. Some places considered halfway houses in their statistics. 11 million. 81% of those were homeless when incarcerated. You'd rather pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to incarcerate a poor person so you don't have to see them because it makes your country look bad. It makes your neighborhood look bad. It hurts your pride. Who cares how much more money it costs to put them in prison or jail than it costs to actually pay for housing, or at least some property where they can put up their own tent, make their own, even if it's made of cardboard, even if it's a old walk-in refrigerator from a restaurant that got torn down, that they reassembled so they could put a padlock on it and keep their stuff safe. At least it's a safe place where they can go for more than 14 days, where they don't have to be dependent on somebody else's help to be able to do these things, while people pretend that their physical disabilities don't exist because they're intelligent. One of the stories from X-Men about Dr. Xavier is that he was able to reanimate his body, even though he had a bullet that went through his spine, so it was permanently severed, and he had no control of his lower body. There was also another creature that gave him the power to have his body back. We don't have the power to use our minds to make our bodies magically work when they won't. We just don't have that ability. There's no magic place on the planet that when you have a spinal injury, that magically your spinal injury goes away just because somebody else wills it, or prays for it, or hopes for it. Well, I'll pray that your back gets better. Thank you very much. But here's the thing, is that you're still telling me to do things. They're not polite suggestions. Many of you get irate and angry because I am incapable of doing the things that you are telling me to do without help. And I don't have the money to keep paying for help that's strung out on drugs, or going to places that are supposed to help me, that tell me that it's a free service over and over again, not when I've had to drive there, and multiple other places that they've sent me to, each one of these places being only a referral service, and ignoring my disabilities and what that actually means. People who are supposed to be mental health professionals, police officers who are taught to de-escalate situations, and what do? They laugh at us and make jokes at us, making fun of us like bullies on a schoolyard. They didn't want to address police shootings in Puyallup until one of their own was shot, until a police officer was shot by police. It's either a no-call, no-show if it's a poor neighborhood, or it's the police showing up hoping that they'll get to shoot somebody that nobody cares about. And you haven't had to live through enough of your friends becoming statistics to realize that, and thus you pretend that it's not real. You pretend that these officers, who are all over the news for killing people, that it's not real. It's a figment of all of our imaginations who live through it, that these things actually happen. It was on the news, dude. That's absolutely not a figment of my imagination. The fact that millions of people within a 500-mile radius of Denver, Colorado watch the Denver news, Nebraskans, watch the Denver news. People in Kansas watch the Denver news. People in Wyoming watch the Denver news. People in Oklahoma and Nevada watch the Denver news. I didn't realize that until recently. One person recognized me because they saw me on Arizona news. No, not everybody recognizes me from that stuff. A lot of people say, oh, well, that happened years ago. Nobody cares. Are you sure? Because they still make all of these web sleuth things. And there's a lot of people that didn't recognize me from the news in many of these places I went. They recognized me because they're alcoholic mothers with time on their hands, lots of free time to get into web sleuth stuff as their form of entertainment. My form of entertainment is making things. These people's form of entertainment is to get involved in other people's lives, to get drunk and assume the worst and project that onto people and tell them what to think and what to feel and what to do. And the people who are most prone to that abuse are high-functioning autistic people. High-functioning people like me. People like Anna Moomin. People like Claire Jordan. We're the most at risk out here. We're the kindest people out here. The most genuine people out here. Claire Jordan's fears, her anxieties are very well founded, and she is allowed to have them, but so am I. Because of her state of crisis, she was unable to make the connection needed. Because of my state of crisis, I was unable to explain to her how important it was that we work on it together and sober, and go in together and sober, and listen to each other together and sober, and back each other up. But she's still willing to help. She knows what I've said to her and about her. She also has absolutely given me permission to record everything with her, and many people have. Chris said that he was alright with being recorded, and then later on, the first thing he started doing is started being afraid of being recorded. One of the things that we learned as a child in the system is that because we grew up in the system, we were going to be more vulnerable. And one of the things that we were to look out for, never trust an adult that asks you to keep a secret. It's a good rule to follow, but it's a rule that doesn't matter when you're called mentally ill. When people want to pretend that autism is just you being a sissy, just you being whiny. When something is hurtful to them, it should not be hurtful to you for some reason. Oh, Sean, it's no big deal. You just get over it. Really? I bet you if I say those things to you, you won't like them. And I won't even say the mean stuff. I'll just go through and say the things that are true. Or the things that are so obviously and absurdly not your fault that you get the point of, yeah, obviously and absurdly, it's not your fault. Are you not understanding how accusing me of saying that you did those things personally that's incredibly dumb? But if you're going to accuse me of saying that, yeah, I'll do it now. You're going to accuse me of doing something I didn't do, saying something I didn't say. But there's also a limit to it. There are things I'm not willing to do. A lot of people tell me about their compassion. Sean, I have compassion. I have compassion. With an angry voice and a hateful tone. And if I do or say anything of that nature back, then I'm a horrible monster, am I not? We have so much compassion that while we're your go-tos when something is messed up, your boyfriend beats you up, and you want to get your kids safely out of the house and somewhere new, you come to men like us. And then you get lonely and you go back to your abuser because he's familiar. Familiarity is important for all of us, not just those of us who are autistic. It's just that those of us who are autistic are deprived of it so often and so frequently and so greatly. It is a need. To love and to be loved is a need. To feel part of a protective group is a need. For those of us who are autistic, our families pretend like they're protecting us is enough, and it's not. We need actual advocacy. The same as the black parents of black children have advocacy. Lori has more than one child. She lives here in Tillamook. 2 of her children are autistic, at least. One of them is high functioning and one of them is medium to low functioning. She's also overwhelmed. She's been abused a lot, and you can tell. There's also situations like with Alexander where he exhibits some of the same traits as her sometimes. But those traits are when he's on substances. He basically does the same thing my older brother did for years. Oh, well, I keep the drugs on rotation, so I can't get addicted to any of them. But meanwhile, you're still getting messed up on those substances and doing messed up things. You're still doing it to drown out your own pain. My older brother is different than me. He gets embarrassed. I don't. Lori is messed up like that because of abuse, and I have to understand that, and I do. I also recognize that a lot of Alexander's traumas, a lot of Farnsworth's traumas, both Ashley and Robert, are brought on by their drug use and their dishonesty with others. It's 2:03. The library here closes at 4 or 5, I believe. I'd like to go in and charge my stuff, not waste too much gas. I'm going to end this video. And I want to say that the compassion and empathy that we autistic people who, although are not allowed to be a part of your society, are not allowed a place in your society, we have no one to speak up for us, especially if we are victimized until we are homeless. And we have no protections from the society that we live in, from their harm, from their incessant need to victimize who they see as the weakest, those who are least likely to be able to protect themselves, those who are most likely to be blamed that it's their fault without anybody looking at any of the facts. If a police officer shoots a male, let's just assume that that male must have deserved it. If a police officer shoots a female, he or she knows that they need to be afraid because the public might actually care. Please stop projecting Jeffrey Dahmer onto us. Please stop projecting Waco onto us. Please stop projecting Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump onto us. Please stop projecting Joe Biden onto us. We have so much empathy and compassion that although we are aware, if we weren't here for you to blame things on, that the people who actually beat you might be held accountable for it. Or they might actually beat you to death because you have nobody that you can go to, because all of us autistic people that you have for years with all of your sob stories, you know that we'll understand because we actually go through those things, so you know you can manipulate us with a sob story. Nobody ever helps us how we need. So when you come to us and you say, oh, well, nobody's helping us how we need. Nobody's helping me how I need to get myself and my kids safe. You understand more than anybody about being abused and being abused in the system. Will you help me? Then later on, when she goes back, it's a different story. And her story about him beating her and her being afraid for her kids is gone. She's gone back to her familiarity, and you never had it. You never had familiarity. You get treated like you're just fibbing because the girl wouldn't touch your pee-pee. Or they say that you're a homosexual and you're just jealous because you wanted her man and you were trying to take him away. If you can't have him, nobody can. You just project whatever cockamamie story that you want. Like, seriously, people actually believe that crap? Oh, yeah, the term mentally ill. You get images in your head of Robert Farnsworth. Or, like I said, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, the Branch Davidians, people who are dumb. You project onto us the image of mental retardation, the same as you do people with cerebral palsy and people with Down syndrome. You project on us that, well, you say that we should be loving and accepting of the LGBT neighbors that we have. And you know what? People like me are. I can be accepting of the LGBT community without being accepting of abuse from members of the LGBT community. I'm not going to pretend that there are not predators in every group. And I'm not going to pretend that predators in those groups that everyone is aware of, that we need to ignore those predators, because if we tell on them, it'll make it bad for everyone else. We can't tell on the rapists in the LGBT community because it'll make it bad for all LGBT, apparently. We're told that we can't be LGBT by the LGBT community, and we're told that we can't be hetero by the hetero community. Those who, many of these women especially, who want to project that they support the LGBT community, they also play on the hatred of the LGBT community when it is beneficial, when they have an ex-boyfriend who didn't do what they wanted. Claiming publicly on their YouTube and Facebook that he was actually into little boys and wear panties, and trying to sell him as a cross-dressing homosexual in a negative light, who was into children. Tried to project that he was a pedophile, that he was a violent abuser, who was also a cross-dresser. So, even though you have that LGBT rainbow as your profile picture, even now, I still took screenshots, and so did he. We also took the screenshots when she wanted him back. When she wanted to say that she couldn't live without him and he's the only man for her. Only 2 weeks between her trying to insinuate that he was a homosexual who was into children and wearing women's clothing and women's undergarments. She wanted him back and had a support for the LGBT community flag up the whole time. That makes no sense. When you say it makes no sense, any of the things that I do, it does make sense. I tried the legal route. I tried going to my friends and family. I tried going to my bully. I tried going to a trusted adult. I tried going to the police. I tried to go into a school nurse, Terry Jepson. Went to a former science teacher, Ed Miller. I went to the people I was supposed to. We have enough compassion that we don't want to end our existence by splatting our brains all over the wall and having one of our siblings find us. We have enough compassion that we don't want to have somebody find us in a red bathtub. We have enough compassion that we don't want our children to find us that way, our spouses to find us that way, our parents to find us that way. The very people that made us feel so unimportant, so insignificant, so minuscule. Our emotions don't matter. You're going to project our emotions at us for us anyway. Not caring about us, you're going to tell others who we are and how we are after never finding out from us who we are and how we are. All you know is our trauma responses to your assumptions and your projections. I don't mean projecting thoughts into our heads with alien brain waves. I mean you project your assumptions onto us. And when your ideas for stopping abuse for us are, oh, well, you just need to love yourself. That's an assumption that we don't love ourselves. And the nastiest thing is when people came to us and said, Sean, I can't do this myself. I need help. I can't do it myself. I'm scared. I need help. I cannot do this myself. And I helped you. And when I was unable to do things for myself that you were able to do, you wouldn't even find out what you were capable of doing. You were too busy talking over me, not allowing me time to speak or time to answer. And the more you interrupted me, the more I had to generalize what was going on into, hey, there's just a bunch of abuse that has happened that you have ignored for the last 6 years because you're always too busy. Yes, we're friends apparently, but only when you want something. Because you know that I'll help you. You know that I'll help immediately if one of your friends or family members disappears. But I have to beg you for years. At least we're fighting for what they have in the Netherlands. Legal euthanization of your victims. That way the people who actually hurt you will go to prison for it, instead of those of us who are easiest to take it out on being perpetually victimized because we helped you how you asked. Did you help us how we asked, or did you try to tell us and try to convince us that we needed some other kind of help? Pity party us because you have kids. Pity party us into helping you because you have kids. Try to pity party us into leaving your name out of a situation where you were manipulating because you have kids. Oh, you'll promise you're going to come forward and tell the truth as long as I leave your name out of it. Well, how long is it going to take you? A week? A month? A year? It's well over half a decade now. What have you done to help? Other than insinuate and infer with your assumptions and your projections including when you tell us what to do or what to think or what to feel. When we tell you that we've already called TFCC, we've already called Adult Protective Services, that we're being ignored because we have to call them alone, and that we're talked over, but you are too busy talking over us too. You show how much you care about someone by the time that you make for them. When you're making time to tell them about you and how you think and how you feel and your assumptions of what they should be doing instead of listening to them, that doesn't mean that you're making time for them. That's making time for you. oftentimes for you to take the opportunity to chastise the victim for trying to get help. How dare they come to you for help? You're poor. How dare they come to you for help? You're a woman, so you have it worse. How dare they come to you for help? You're black, so you have it worse. How dare they come to you for help? Thank goodness for the native peoples of Hardin, Montana, for being the one group of peoples who actually treated me with humanity and respect. You pretend that disabilities that I was born with, Tourette syndrome, Asperger's, you pretend that these are choices that I made. You also pretend that after you have harmed me because I choose to make funny noises, or I choose to move my wrists funny or move my eyes funny when I'm nervous or scared, that I must be on drugs. Drugs are a choice. PTSD is not. You pretend that I choose to have PTSD. No, I have to choose to mask post-traumatic stress disorder and stress-related and trauma-related reactions to abuse. Because you'll pretend that I'm just a violent person who is hateful at the world for no reason whatsoever, other than because I have a penis and must be a hateful person. Because I am mentally ill, I must be schizophrenic and delusional and want to harm and kill people like Ted Bundy. And, of course, wingnuts. Complete and total wingnuts who believe that the Illuminati had something to do with their birth. Or people who want to have a cult at the Branch Davidian compound. Or, of course, the cult of idiots who wanted to pretend that burning down that compound and killing at least 25 children is somehow okay. Those children didn't deserve to be murdered over the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. Whether we agree with them or not, they didn't deserve to be murdered.